Today we are talking about quantum physics, Buddhism, and the truth about the soul. We're going to explore meta-rationalism. Now, meta-rationalism is the neo-Genian system that says metaphysics can be understood rationally, and that's exactly what we're going to be taking a look at today as we explore the true nature of the soul, of the mind, of consciousness, of eternity, as we look at ideas in quantum physics, in science, in information theory, and ideas in spiritual systems like Buddhism and Hinduism, and see that we can actually transcend them by synthesizing them and realize that these ideas are actually not opposed to each other, but are just looking at different aspects, two different sides of the same coin. And we can understand that we can know these things rationally, logically, and mathematically, the true nature of the self, the true nature of the soul, the true nature of what we are, where we are, and why we are here. We have the power to know this. We have the power to understand this. Like the ancient aphorism says, know thyself and you will know the universe and the gods. And that is because we are the universe and the gods. So let's look within. That's what we're doing today. Quantum physics, Buddhism, the nature of the soul, how to understand this rationally, meta-rationally. So real quick before I begin, please like and subscribe. It helps get this information out there, spreads it around. Also, if you enjoy my work, consider supporting on Patreon, and you will get access to all of our members-only video, and there's a new members-only video every single week. Today's members-only video coming out right after this video is, do plants have souls? As we explore the nature of nature, and that's going to be really great, really good complement to this. So support at any tier on Patreon, or tier 2 or higher on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video. Helps out a lot. Let's see. Big shout out to, watch out for scammers in the comments. There are people in the comments, people have been telling me about this, DMing them, and people pretending to be me, saying to join my WhatsApp or join my Telegram. That's not me. I'm not out there DMing people saying to join my Telegram or anything. That's not me. Don't fall for it. Also, there are a lot of people in groups out there who don't like what we're doing, and some of them are spreading misinformation and disinformation about me and our group and what we do. So, hey, just be on the lookout. Use your head, use your mind, use logic and reason. Don't fall for the BS. Here we go. Quantum physics, Buddhism, and the nature of the soul. This is going to be great. Now, we're going to be taking a look at this, and I'm going to be reading some quotes from this very excellent and interesting article called Quantum Physics, Buddhism, Aquinas, and the Nature of the Soul by Tim Anderson, PhD. And so like I said, I'm going to be reading some quotes from this individual's comments on this. And so if you enjoy any of the quotes that I read from their article, go to medium.com and give them a follow. Go support them. Go give them a follow if you enjoy some of the quotes here that we will be reading from them. So this starts off by saying, modern scientism denies the existence of a soul because it fails to understand what is meant by the human soul from a philosophical perspective. And this is a critical point, and I love this, and it really seems like this individual, let me see their name again, Tim Anderson, they hold a PhD, and I wonder what their PhD is in. It says principal research scientist at Georgia Tech. I'm not sure what their PhD is in, but I love what they are pointing out. And they're pointing out that scientism denies the existence of the human soul, but they don't even understand what is meant by the human soul. And most people don't understand what is meant by the human soul. Most people today, when you ask them if they believe in the soul, they think of it as almost something separate to them or adjacent to them, like something that, there's this idea of selling your soul. Like, oh, can I sell my soul? A soul isn't something that you have. A soul is what you are. So we're going to be taking a look at the idea of, we're going to get into this in a lot of detail, but what the soul is what you are. And often in philosophy, soul was used synonymously with mind. It's only really when the scientific revolution occurred and modern science really started becoming the prevailing paradigm that you kind of had the separation of the two ideas, and instead the mind got associated with the brain and the soul got associated with a figment of the imagination or some kind of myth. When that's not true at all. And we can see I've talked about it so much on my channel on how it's a huge fallacy to think that the brain can generate the mind. It just can't. It's a logical impossibility. I feel like we've talked about it to death. So if you want to know why, see my many other videos on why the brain can't generate the mind. So the mind is associated with soul. But let me keep reading here from what Tim has to say. So scientism denies the soul because it fails to understand what is meant by the soul. Because religion adopts the concept of the soul for its own purposes, it is considered to exist within the realm of belief in the supernatural, yet the human soul is both a theological and a philosophical concept. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that the soul is the immaterial aspect or essence of a human being, that which confers individuality and humanity, often considered to be synonymous with the mind or the self. And this is a great definition. It's not a perfect definition, but it's a great definition. You can see that it doesn't have to do with this sort of like ghostly sort of spiritual element that one has that is somehow tied to eternity in a way where you're going to heaven or hell or have karmic debts or this. What it is the immaterial aspect of a human being, which confers individuality and is synonymous with the mind or self. So, and this understanding, the soul is the mind, it's the self, it's what you are. So you, as in the ability that you have right now to be sentient, to have a subjective experience, the fact that you can experience hot and cold and love and hate and dreams and all of the subjective experiences that you have, your ability to think, everything dealing with your experiences and your thought processes, that is your soul. It is you. It is what you are. You are a soul. So we're going to now let me put to tell you right now the Neo-Genian conception of the soul. So in the Neo-Genian conception of the soul, remember, we are working a meta-rationalist framework, which means we believe that we can understand and know the metaphysical rationally and logically. So what is the soul? The soul is a collection of frequency patterns, particular types of frequency patterns known as sinusoidal waves, specifically sine and cosine waves. So a soul, and in our system, this is what we call a zeta. A soul or a zeta is a container of frequency patterns, very specific kind of frequency patterns called sine and cosine waves that are completely mathematical concepts. Now, these sinusoidal waves form what is known as a basis. What is a basis? A basis is a fundamental collection of something, some element, wherein which you can use a combination of those elements to form more complex structures. So you can think of it as basic building blocks. If you look at, a bunch of Legos, you can imagine that you just have individual Lego pieces. You can take those individual Lego pieces and form any kind of structure you'd like. You can build castles and cars and planes and boats. You can build all kinds of Lego things. You can build a Lego Death Star if you want. You can build all kinds of cool stuff with Legos. But you can always decompose or break those Legos down into their basic or basis Legos. They're the fundamental aspects on which you can construct more complicated things, but they can't be broken down any further. They are as basic as you can get. You can't when you take it apart, you can't break the Legos down any further unless you got a saw and started hacking at them. But we're talking about this in an eternal aspect, and when you can't just take a saw to sinusoidal waveforms. So a mind or a soul is a mathematical entity composed of sine and cosine waves, sinusoidal waveforms, that form a basis, meaning these frequencies can be combined to create higher and more complex structures. And this is what gives our individuality and our unique experiences, in that each and every one of us has a unique frequency pattern. So each and every one of us as an eternal soul is a collection of these basis sinusoidal waves, these frequency patterns. But due to the fact that we can use these frequency patterns to combine into complex structures, we each have a unique signature, a unique pattern, which gives us our individuality and our uniqueness and results in our multiplicity and our diversity. And this is exactly how we're able to experience each other in diversity. And this is how we, as a mind, diversified ourselves into a multiplicity of minds, or a multiplicity of zetas, or a multiplicity of souls to be able to have this experience together. So we're going to be talking more about this, but I want to put that out there real quick. The basic idea of the Neo-Genian conception of a soul being a mathematical being, a frequency of thought. All these concepts are tied together. Mind, frequency, mathematics, energy, thought. These are all different words for different perspectives on the same single substance, the same single thing that makes us all up. So you can see right away, we're defining the soul in a very precise way. It's a complete and consistent set of what would be called Fourier basis waves. So we're explaining the soul in a rational, consistent way. It's not some kind of vague definition, or this, oh, well, it's this thing that we all have that carries karmic debt, or Jesus will get really mad at you if you don't believe in him and make your soul go to hell. Whatever. It's not any of this sort of religious belief or even vague intuition, but rather rigorously defined. And we have, of course, reasons for why this is all the case. It's not like we're just pulling this out of the air, out of nothing. There are reasons for why this is the case, and it has to do with the structure of existence, and that reality can only exist in a singular way. There's not multiple ways reality can be, at least foundationally. There's only a singular way, and it ends up resulting in frequency patterns, because frequency patterns are related to cyclical patterns, and cyclical patterns are perfect. They're the perfect pattern. And so because reality is based on these perfect patterns, it begins to give rise to frequencies, because when you have cyclical patterns, you automatically have frequencies. They go hand in hand together. Sinusoidal waves are another way of looking at circles. If you have a circle, you're going to have waves. They go together, mathematically speaking. So anyway, but let's continue. There's a lot to talk about here. So it says, so was it Tom or Tim? Tim quoted the Encyclopedia Britannica as the soul being the immaterial aspect or essence of a human, the thing that confers individuality and humanity, often considered to be synonymous with the mind or the self. It says, there is no hint of religion or the supernatural in this definition. And there isn't. You're right. It's a very, it could be more precise, but it's a good definition. And it does not have supernatural or religious connotation. And it is reasonable to ask these 4 questions. Is there an immortal, immaterial aspect to a human person? Is that aspect uniquely human essence or soul? What is that essence? What happens to it upon the death of the body? It says quantum physics provides some answers to how a person's essence could survive the death of the body. In fact, whole books have been written on quantum immortality, but such arguments such as quantum immortality and the melding of Eastern mysticism with quantum theory, however, are entirely speculative and make for better science fiction than philosophy. So basically, there's a lot of these ideas out there dealing with quantum immortality and Eastern and mystical ideas that are very, very speculative. And that is the issue. Is that when you come to these ideas, a lot of them are just feelings that people have, and this is the problem with a lot of Eastern religion. You have a problem with there's a problem with Eastern religion and Eastern philosophy, and there's a problem with Western philosophy. So here are the problems. When it comes to Eastern religion and Eastern philosophy, great things about it, it's highly intuitive and it's holistic. So it is usually very connected to the metaphysical domain and understanding that reality is a unified whole. Now, Western philosophy is the opposite. It sees things in pieces and is very rigorous and systematic. So you have East and West that have kind of evolved in a similar way to the left and right hemispheric functions of the brain, which is very interesting. When you look at the left and right hemispheric functions of the brain, what are they often associated with? The right hemispheric associations are often associated with the unconscious, dealing with holisms, holistic ideas, intuition, art and music. And the left side of the brain is very linear. Math, language, systematizing, logic, reason. Now, here's the idea. Do you want the left and right hemispheres of your brain to be opposed to each other? No, that's a problem. If your left and right hemispheres are not in sync, if they're not synchronizing together, if they're not in a synergistic relationship, you're going to have a lot of problems. So you use the right and left hemisphere of the brain together. So for example, when it comes to language, well, you would say, well, the left hemispheric functions are associated with language, right? Well, it's not that clear. You see, when it comes to language, the structure of language, the syntax, the structure of language, the rules, grammar, the syntax, that's associated with the left hemisphere. But the right hemisphere is associated with meaning. Left hemisphere is going to get the structure, the ordering, the rules. It's not going to know what the sentence means. The right hemisphere is going to know what the sentence means, but isn't going to be able to deal with the logical rule set. So you need both working together. Well, here's the problem with East and West philosophy. They're very opposed to each other. Usually the East thinks the West is wrong, the West thinks that the East is wrong. So in the East, you have these very intuitive ideas about the nature of the soul and the nature of immaterial existence and eternity and reality being a connected whole. But they're not very rigorous. They're not very well defined. It's all very vague and airy and not delineated very well. Well, then you have West, which West is very precise, very logical, very mathematical, very dealing with linearity, logic, reason, etc. But they're very divorced from the intuitive, holistic aspect of reality. So you basically have the Eastern philosophy going, oh, the philosophy of the West is missing this whole big picture. They're too into the little details. And then you have the Western philosophy that goes, oh, well, the Eastern philosophy is all airy-fairy. There's no rigor. It's just a bunch of mumbo-jumbo and spiritual BS. Well, really, it's about, like the left and right hemispheric functions of the brain, about understanding both perspectives. And that's exactly what we are about in our system of meta-rationalism, and that the metaphysical domain can be understood rationally, is that we understand that intuitively and holistically, reality is a immaterial mind that is expressing itself through a multiplicity of minds, and that we are eternal souls, but that we can understand this rigorously and mathematically and logically. We don't have to throw out math reason. Well, we have to we just transcend these things. It's beyond understanding. So you get that a lot in Eastern religion. Oh, it's beyond understanding. It's beyond, and this is in not just Eastern religion, but a lot of New Age and spiritualist philosophies as well. And this is the problem, where you have to have them both work together in a synergistic way. And so we can understand, for example, the nature of the soul, not just by going, oh, well, I meditated for 3 years and I came to these conclusions because of that. Sure, that can help, but that's going to be very, very vague. Where you can have the understanding of the nature of the soul through perhaps phenomenological experiences like that, but also through rigorous, rational, structured definitions and understanding as well, which is why we talk about the nature of the soul, or what we call a zeta, as being a system of mathematical frequency patterns, specifically sine and cosine waves that form a Fourier basis set, which we can, use to combine into various complex structures, which gives us our particular unique identifier, which makes us unique and diverse within a vast structure. And this is what also leads to our eternality as well, when we begin to understand the nature of mathematics, and that mathematics must be true, and that we are ourselves mathematical beings. And mathematics must be true because it's a necessary truth. The denial of it results in a contradiction. For example, 2 + 2 = 4 is a necessary truth. If you deny 2 + 2 = 4, it leads to a logical contradiction. If you say 2 + 2 = 67, that's a logical contradiction. You have a problem. You know that mathematics is a necessary truth. It's an eternal truth and must always be true. Contingent truths are not the case, like saying America exists. That's a contingent truth. If you deny it, it does not result in a logical contradiction. If you say America does not exist, that's not true, but it doesn't break logic. It's not a problem for reason. You can imagine a universe in which America did not exist. You cannot imagine a universe in which 2 + 2 does not equal 4. Now, don't confuse that with the particular symbols that we've invented. Yes, we can imagine a universe where we use different symbols, but that specific relation is an eternal relation that's always true. And we ourselves are basically systems of these relations. And so we are true, we are eternally true, we are logically necessary, our fundamental aspect. We can create contingent structures from our necessary foundations being the basis waves, and our contingent structures being the combinations of those waves that gives us our unique identifier. So, let's see. Continuing to read here, it says the soul is fundamentally a body's life force. And this is, for the life of me, Tom. I'm going to say it's Tom. Is it Tom? It's Tim. God damn it. I don't know why I have such a hard time remembering whether it's Tim or Tom. Tim. I apologize, Tim. I'm really enjoying the quotes here, though. So, Tim says, the soul is fundamentally a body's life force. Indeed, the word for soul used to be in the New Testament is suche, which means breath of life. Interesting. I don't know if that's I don't know how to pronounce that exactly, but I know in the Greek, often the word was pneuma, which also means breath or soul. From a modern physics perspective, inanimate bodies require two general things to be animate: energy and information. Energy is physical in that it has mass. Information, however, is immaterial. It and its cousin entropy have no mass. Information gives matter its substantial form and is at the heart of how energy and matter self-organize into life. If anything can be called the breath of life, it is information, particularly information that enables emergent phenomena, that which is more than the sum of its parts. But can the soul be considered to be made of information? First, let's ask if people even have souls. Okay, so this is really cool. This is great. Let's talk about this. What does Tim say? Tim says, from a physics perspective, inanimate bodies require two things to be animate: energy and information. Tim says energy is physical and has mass, but information is immaterial. And so Tim asks, well, could the soul be considered to be made of information? And he says it is information particularly that enables emergent phenomena that is more than the sum of its parts. Right? Let's break this down and take a look and see how our definition and understanding of the soul matches this perfectly. So first of all, he says, from a science perspective, for things to be animate, you need energy and information, but energy has mass. Information, however, does not. And could the soul be made of information? And it's information, particularly that if we want to call it the breath of life, it should have the property of being able to have emergent phenomena, things that are more than the sum of its parts. Okay, so let's talk about this. First of all, so in our conception, the sinusoidal waves that make up the frequencies of a zeta are both energy and information, but it's not energy that has mass. It's what we would call dimensionless energy. And this is dimensionless energy in that it's not reliant on any kind of unit. However, it does have a form of being or extension via its inherent motion. So essentially what this means is you have a system of mind. That's what we are. We're a mind. We're a system of mind. And we have these individual frequencies that make us up. These frequencies are in motion. What does one mean by frequencies being in motion? Because a lot of people say, well, a wave isn't a thing. A wave is something that it does. That's right in some respect. So what we're really talking about is a dynamic point that is going in a wave trajectory. So you have dynamic points that are in motion following a wave trajectory. And you can think of these as the fundamental particles of existence in a certain way, but these are not physical particles. They are mental particles. Mental particles meaning they don't have anything to do with space or time, but rather they're with regard to what? Pure information. So here's the idea. You have information in motion, which is dimensionless energy. So do you see how cool this is? Tim is saying that well, you need energy and information for inanimate to be animate. Oh, but energy has mass, but information doesn't. Well, could the soul be information, and it should also have the property of having emergent phenomena? Well, what we're saying is that information in motion is dimensionless energy. So not only is the soul made of information, but it's also made of energy. So you have that extra thing as well. It's just not energy with any kind of mass with regard to the space-time domain, but rather it's inherent dimensionless energy from information being in motion. And information being in motion is just comes from the dynamic properties of mathematics, of a point being able to follow a wave trajectory. These are all mathematical. You have a mathematical point, which is reliant on a specific formula known as Euler's formula, and it is following a sinusoidal trajectory. And by virtue of following the sinusoidal trajectory, it gains a being. It gains not physical not physicality, but it gains a mental substance. It has a mental attribute to it. And so you have energy and you have information in motion, which is dimensionless energy, and then the other property, it should have emergent phenomena which is more than the sum of its parts. Well, we already talked about this. All of these frequencies are basis waves, and through the combination of these basis waves, you can form more complex structures. In fact, by Fourier mathematics, through these frequency patterns, you can form any structure in the universe, any wave structure in the universe, no matter how complex. Any realizable wave structure in the universe can be composed of these basis waves, these sinusoidal frequency components. And why is that important? Because quantum mechanics shows that the entire reality, all of reality, behaves like waves. So all of reality can be considered as a kind of wave function. And what does quantum mechanics show us is that you have this idea of wave-particle duality, this idea of, well, it seems like they're particles, but they behave like waves. Well, this is exactly what we're talking about with its mental counterpart as dynamic points that behave in wave trajectories, that have wave properties. And so through the combination of these basis waves, you can construct any wave function, no matter how complicated, even if it's as complicated as the universe itself. And why is this important? Because this is not the focus of today's topic, but when minds interact together, they form more complex frequency patterns, and this is how the entirety of the universe arises. The universe arises from the mental frequency components of all eternal souls, all zetas in existence, giving rise to the universe of space-time, which we call the holos. So, can the soul be considered to be made of information? Not only information, but information in motion, which is dimensionless energy, that enables emergent phenomenon, which is more than the sum of its parts. So, he says, first let's ask if people even have souls. Now, here's where we get into the idea of Buddhism. It says, no self means no soul. Many Buddhists claim to deny the existence of a self or a soul. This is the concept of no self, or anatman, in Sanskrit. This was a major departure from Hinduism, the ancestor religion of Buddhism. Yes, so here's the idea. You have Buddhism and you have Hinduism. Buddhism comes from Hinduism, and Hinduism has the idea of Atman. Atman is soul or self. Atman means the self. So in Hinduism, everyone is Atman. Everyone is a soul. Everyone is the self. And in particular types of, Hinduism is a very, very, very complex with multifaceted different subsets and structures and branches and sects and whatnot. But particular systems like Vedanta, especially Advaita Vedanta, says that the ultimate reality is Brahman, and that we are all Atman, and it is for Atman to realize that it is Brahman, then it becomes Brahman. Let's not get too much into that there. It's very, very interesting, and we could do a whole topic on that. But the idea is that Hinduism has the concept of Atman, or the eternal self, or the eternal soul. Buddhism has the Anatman, or the no self, which is the opposite stance. So let's take a look at this. It says, on the other hand, Buddhists also largely believe in reincarnation, which supposes that some element of a person survives death. So Buddhists don't believe in the soul or an enduring self, but they do believe in reincarnation, which supposes some element of a person survives death. And this largely has to do with karma and things like this. So it says, Buddhists don't deny that a person's consciousness can inhabit other bodies. Rather, no self derives from two beliefs. One, our inability to perceive anything that can be considered to be the self, and two, the compound nature of what we think of as the self. No thought, perception, or physical object is part of the self. What we consider to be the self is an illusion based on a combination of constantly changing perceptions. Then do Buddhists, here I have something I want to say very much on this, but I just want to read a little more to see where to stop here. Then do Buddhists believe that consciousness is the soul or self? No, because consciousness itself has no uniqueness and is universal. Take, for example, if you say, I see the red car, nowhere in the statement is that an expression of self. I is an artificially constructed ego that the brain uses to differentiate itself from the rest of the world. To see expresses the type of conscious experience, vision, and the red car is clearly not the self. Let me just see how far I want to go here. That's... okay, let me... There's some more interesting things I want to point out here, but let me just address this. So Buddhism says there is no self. And this largely is based on the idea that there's anything that there's nothing that we can perceive that could be considered the self. And they use there's the example of I see the red car. There's no self in that statement. I is an artificially constructed ego to differentiate self from the rest of the world, and to see expresses the type of conscious experience, vision, and the red car is clearly not the self. So they have this idea. It's kind of like the onion example as well. You know, Shrek, ogres have a lot of layers, but it's the idea of if you think of yourself as like an onion, you start to peel away different layers, like your different thoughts and you know, all the different aspects of you are kind of like the onion. And they go, oh, well, but you never get to a center. You never get to a thing that is the self. So this idea in Buddhism is that the self is an illusion. There is no enduring thing. There is just this illusion of self because of perceptions. And the self can't be found anywhere. What is the self? What is the self? It's not your ego. It's not any of your, you know, specific perceptions, etc. So what is the self? Buddhism says, well, we can't find the self anywhere. That's because there is no self, there is no soul, there is no eternal enduring aspect. Well, here's the issue with this. So it's very, very interesting because Buddhists, and this is kind of what I went to earlier, how I said Eastern philosophy has a lot of great intuitions, but it's not very rigorous and not very well defined. And you have problems like this, where you have this intuition of like, oh, well, I can't seem to find myself intuitively, so there must be no self. Well, they're coming to a very, very intuitive, important truth, but the rigor is lacking here, in which shows that there is actually an enduring self. And so let's talk about this. So how have we defined the soul or the mind or a zeta? It is a system of frequencies. That's what it is. It is a full and complete consistent set of frequency patterns. Now, each one of these frequencies are, like I said, dynamic points in motion, and it's information in motion. Now, each of these dynamic points in motion are also imbued with qualia. What is qualia? It's an instance of subjective experience. So in other words, every one of these frequencies, there is an experience paired with it. Now, of course, we can't say what that experience it is, but you can imagine all manners of, you know, the color red, pain, pleasure, etc. Of course, basic waves are going to have very basic kind of experiences. But you can imagine combining basic experiences to make more complex experiences. Just like you can combine basic waves to make more complex wave structures, you combine basic experiences to create more complex experiences. You can imagine the wave structure of a strawberry is extremely complex, and your experience of that strawberry is very complex. There's touch and taste and smell and all kinds of sensations interplaying and going on. So you, as being a mathematical system of dynamic frequency, dynamic points in motion, isn't just a cold, dead, calculating machine. It's alive. That's because reality is a living system. And these qualitative aspects, these experiential aspects, are not mathematical, and they themselves can't be explained mathematically, but they can be explained rationally. And rationally speaking, we know that these instances of subjective experiences must be tied to some kind of form so that they behave rationally. And this is, of course, the mathematical structure. In other words, these experiences can't just be out floating around in the void anywhere. They have to be tied to something, and they are tied to these mathematical form, mathematical structure. So what this means is you, as a system of frequencies, are also a system of experiences. And so you, as being a complete and consistent set of frequency patterns, are also a complete and consistent set of frequencies. So of experiences. So here's the interesting thing that Buddhists kind of intuitively tap into, but also what makes them, but also due to the lack of mathematical rigor, they come to an incorrect conclusion. They have an intuition, but have an incorrect conclusion. So their intuition is, well, we sit here and we think and we examine all our thoughts and all our modes of expression and everything, and we can all see these different pieces and parts, but there's no thing that is the self that we can come to. Like, where is the self? What is the self? Well, the self doesn't seem to exist. It's just this amalgamation of different thoughts and experiences, etc. Well, it seems like there's no self. Well, the idea here is that you, as a Zedic mind, as a Zeta, as a soul, literally are that collection of experiences. So what you are is the collection considered in its entirety. The entire collection is what you are. So when you sit there and go, well, I can't seem to find anything other than the experiences, it's because you are the experiences. You are an experiencing system, and all of these mass complex, intricate patterns and interlacing structures of experience are what you are. So Buddhists are intuitively right by going, well, we can't seem to find a single thing that is the soul, that we can point to and go, well, that is the soul, or even like conceptually or like metaphor. More, I don't mean literally point to, you know what I mean? But the idea is that they've kind of intuitively seen that, oh, well, it's just this mosaic of experiences, but there seems to be no underlying self. But the thing is that mosaic of experiences is the foundation upon which the self is. So you are a collection as a soul of these dynamic frequencies, these points in motion that are living and alive and imbued with experiences. And that is what you are. And you are an enduring self, an enduring soul, because you're a complete and consistent set of mathematical pattern. And because you're a complete and consistent set of mathematical pattern, it can't ever be destroyed. It can be transformed, but it can't be destroyed. The reason why it can't be destroyed is it's because it's a logically complete system. It would be like trying to remove the number 2 from mathematics. That's not logically possible. You can't logically remove the number 2 from math. You can't do it. It's not possible. So it's a logical impossibility for a soul or a mind to be destroyed, because every mind is itself a complete and consistent set of mathematics. You can kind of think of it as like a perfect puzzle, and each one is a complete puzzle. But that puzzle can't be broken up. All the pieces in the puzzle are intrinsic and necessarily there as part of the essence of a thing. So each and every one of us, our soul is an enduring self, but the particular structures that we form are contingent. So you can have an experience of this, though. Well, we can say what's most likely the experience of this is that many people have had the experience of, oh, pure white light. I have had this experience as well. Now, of course, from a purely rigorous perspective, we can't say exactly, oh, that is the experience of the self, but that is likely to be the experience of the self. That is likely the experience of the self because it's a very basic blank experience. And this would be, but it's not no experience. It still is an experience. And this would likely be tapping into the source of what we all are, which is those fundamental frequencies, those fundamental basis waves that make everything up. So, excuse me. You can see it's very, very cool to see how all these systems get little flashes of the truth, but they often go wildly wrong. And the reason they go wildly wrong is because, and this is the very frustrating thing to me about humanity, and which I don't understand, is that everyone is just taking a little piece or a little perspective of existence. And it's this idea of Eastern philosophy like looking down on Western philosophy and Western philosophy looking down on Eastern philosophy. And it's like, obviously, you should combine them. It's like the right brain being against the left brain. It doesn't make sense. And you look at humanity, and humanity is just divided in every aspect. That's one of the, humanity has two major problems. One major problem is that it doesn't look within. It's always looking outside, never looking within. Scientists looking to the stars, and religious looking to the gods, and people looking to a tyrant or a lead. No, look to yourself, look within. The information lies within. And then also so much divisiveness and rather than unity. And that's everywhere, whether that's political or religious or economical or cultural or whatever. Humanity is just divided on all fronts. And so we need a world to make a better world. And that's exactly what the Neogenian system is about. It's about creating a neogenesis, a new beginning. So to create a Neogenian world, a neogenesis on Earth is to have humanity look within and become united. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to create a new humanity and a new Earth through a new consciousness. Look within, become united. That's what we need for a new world right here and right now. And understanding these concepts helps us understand that. When we understand what we are, where we are, why we are here, we can build a world that reflects that, which is exactly what we want to do. Let's see. So interesting idea that, Buddhists come to, but through very interesting intuitive explorations, mindfulness, etc. But it is actually the collection of those experiences that is what is the self. So let's see. So Tim is commenting on this and says, not all things in the universe are impermanent and changeable, however. As far as we know from quantum theory, information can change, but it is always conserved and recoverable. And that's exactly what a soul is, a system of information that can change, but it's always conserved and always recoverable. You can use the basis sinusoidal waves to form contingent complex structures, but you can always get to those basis waves, and it's a complete and consistent system that reflects complete and total energy conservation in every way. In fact, it reflects energy and conservation in every way, so that the total mathematical result of a zeta is zero. That's why we call a zeta, is because a zeta is mathematically equivalent to the concepts of 1, 0, and infinity, in that it is one mind of infinite energy that balances perfectly to zero. So it's a triune triple concept, a 1, a unity, a 1, a 0, and an infinity in very specific ways of understanding these concepts. So information conservation is a feature of all complete interpretations of quantum theory that assume that Schrödinger's equation is fundamentally correct. Thus, the information content of the universe is changeless. It is merely the form it takes that changes. Do you see how important this is? And I'm really loving this article. Big props to Tim. Great observation. The information of the universe, content of the universe is changeless. It is merely the form it takes that changes. One can always apply processes to move that information forwards and backwards in time. So what Tim is applying to the universe is also true for each and every individual soul, or zeta. Each and every soul, each and every zeta, each and every system of dimensionless energy. The information content is changeless, but the form it takes is what changes. You have all these basis frequencies, but these basis frequencies, through their interactions, can take different forms. Think of it like Legos. If you have a box of 1,000 Legos, you can create all manner of structures and transformations, but you will always have 1,000 Legos. You're not going to have more. You're not going to have less. You're always going to have 1,000 Legos. And what I mean, of course, obviously you could lose some or add some, but that's not what I mean. I mean, pretend in a world where you couldn't do that. I mean, there's nothing that you can do to the Legos themselves to give you more than 1,000. Of course, assuming that these are indivisible. So that's kind of what that means, is that no matter what you do, no matter what structure you make with these 1,000 Legos, whether you make a pirate ship or a plane or a city or whatever, when you're always going to have 1,000. You're not going to have more than 1,000 or less than 1,000 because of the structure you build. It doesn't matter what structures you build, what transformations you make, you will always have 1,000, no more, no less. So the information content of the universe is changeless. It's merely the form that it takes that changes. Same thing with every soul, every zeta, every mind, all the same concept. The information content does not change. It's the form it takes that changes. So the basis sinusoidal waves are always there, but the forms those waves takes on, that changes. That's what gives us our unique identifier, our unique diverse patterns. What makes each one of us different than another is our unique transformations that we take place. We're all in a beautiful process of transformation, growth. And that's what neogenesis is all about. So assuming that thus the information that becomes you, your body, and your mind always exist and always will exist. That is true, but we have to be very careful here to realize that there is, of course, a difference between you as a soul and you as a body. You as a soul is what you are, you as a mind. Now, your body is formed by contingent configurations of frequency patterns from all minds in existence. Your body can die, though. Your body can die and pass away. Your body is obviously not eternal, but the components that make up your body are the energy that is your body is going to, you're going to rot in the ground, and of course that's going to become worm food and going to go to help plants grow in rich soil. Not to be weird or gross about it, but you get what I'm saying. Your body just doesn't disappear into nothingness. It integrates, its energy disperses back into the reality around it, and it takes different forms. But that's not you. That's not what you are. That's just your avatar. What you truly are is a mind, and you as an eternal mind are a complete and consistent system. So you as a mind is different than your body. Your mind doesn't dissipate and go, and you as a soul, you as an energetic structure as a soul, your energy doesn't dissipate and be absorbed into some universal oneness or anything like that. You are you. Now, it's important to understand that we do form a singular network self, but that's a topic for another day, where each one of us as Zetic minds form the Zeta configuration. And the Zeta configuration is the configuration of all Zetic minds together, considered as one subject, as not one subject, but rather one structure, a singular network structure. So reality is one and many at the same time. This is, again, East and West differences. Like East goes, oh, reality is one, and West is more like, no, reality isn't one. There's a lot of bits and pieces and parts. Well, it's both one and many. We're all individual minds with diverse patterns that form a singular network mind, the Zeta configuration, and we are all experiencing ourselves as individual nodes or perspectives of the network. Of a singular living experiencing mind that is not itself its own entity, but simply an emergent structure from the individual Zetic minds that compose it. Assuming that information conservation is an absolute law of the universe, quantum theory is unitary, then we can answer the first question, is there an immortal, immaterial aspect of you, in the affirmative? While Buddhists would deny that this immortal aspect carries personal uniqueness, they don't deny it exists, rather they just claim it means you are just part of everything else. And that's not our position. It's not that we are part of it. We are part of everything else, but also our own individual structure as well. And that's because what reality is the composition of all our frequency patterns together. So you have a unique energetic structure, and that's the particular configuration that your frequencies take on. This transforms and grows and evolves into more complex and interesting structures. When you consider all these structures together as an additive result, which is a mathematical property inherent to the system, you get the physical universe. Because when you go to sleep and dream, that's just a projection of your internal frequency patterns. It's a spatial, temporal, internal, dimensional experience of your mind. Now, when you consider all minds together and their additive result in forming a universal wave function, then the physical universe is the projection of that internal frequency structure. That would be a projection of the zeta configuration of that point, the network mind. So in other words, the space-time universe is a dream of the network mind, of the zeta configuration. This is why it's a long and persistent and stable dream, because it's composed of all minds of existence, so you can't just change things by thinking about it, because it's not your individual dream to change. But that being said, your frequencies do contribute to it, and so thus you are distributed throughout the universe in a certain point of view. Your frequency patterns are distributed throughout the universe, as well as being contained within you. I want to make that very clear, because I don't want you to think there could be a misunderstanding there. You are an individual mind. When I say that your frequency components are distributed throughout the universe, you are still an individual, unified, unitary mind. This distribution just takes place because of the fact that frequency patterns, in contrast to space-time patterns, are non-local. So they're non-local components, which means that they are sort of distributed across the entire system rather than being localized in any one area. What avatars do, what bodies do, is what allows to take you as a non-local mind and have a localized experience, meaning it allows you to have an experience of being in a particular place, in a particular location, in a particular time, interacting in a particular dimension, rather than being in a non-local domain where things are not like that with respect to space-time. So anyway, is our information theoretic essence a human soul? Yes, as we understand it in our system, not just information, but living information in motion that is mathematical and forms a complete and consistent set of frequency patterns. That is what a soul is. That's what a zeta is. That's what a mind is. Is the soul divisible? The soul is not divisible. The mind is not divisible. The soul and the mind has elements or parts, and those elements or parts are the individual frequency patterns that make it up. But those individual frequency patterns that make it up are part of a holistic system where you can't remove one of the parts. So you can't divide a soul. You can't divide a zeta. The reason why you can't divide a zeta is because it is that would be like trying to divide mathematics. Like, oh, well, we're going to just take out all these numbers. No, all of mathematics relies on each other for it to make sense. You can't just take the number 2 out of math. If you take the number 2 out of math, well, now 4 doesn't make any sense. None of the numbers are going to, none of the numbers that rely on the concept of 2 are going to make any sense. And it breaks logic. It's a logical impossibility. So dividing a zeta is a logical impossibility because it would be like trying to... You would be violating the rules of mathematics. So the soul is not divisible, even though it contains parts. Those parts are part of a complete and consistent holistic structure and thus cannot be divided. Let's see here. Can the soul be destroyed? No, for the same reasons that I said. The soul cannot be destroyed because it is a system of living information that is necessarily true. Its denial results in a logical contradiction, and thus it must be true in all possible worlds for all time, for all eternity. Do we remember anything about our past lives after we die? Complicated question. Yes, we can, but this has, I'm trying to think if I have time to get into all this. I have done videos about what happens after we die. Check out my, I don't know, just search my channel. I've probably done several videos on those. Finally, it says the big question for philosophy, particularly those who study Aquinas, has been, great one. What is the interface between the material and the immaterial? How does that work? So yes, this is a great question. If the mind or the soul is immaterial and the physical world is material, well, how do they interact? This is known as the interaction problem. It stems from Cartesian dualism. And so the interaction problem is, so if the mind is immaterial and the material world is material, how do they interact with each other? They seem like two completely different things. Excuse me. And so the idea is, in that our system, they are not actually two different things. They're all the same thing. And they're all the same thing in respect that they are all mathematical. And so physical reality isn't actually physical. It's a projection from a frequency domain. It's a projection from a domain of mind. It is a particular expression of the domain of mind. It's another way of looking at something. You can kind of think of it as almost like a shadow. They're connected together intrinsically, and they're connected together intrinsically by a certain kind of mathematics known as Fourier mathematics. Fourier mathematics shows how you can take frequency information and represent frequency information as space and or time information. So in essence, you can take information that we're relating to the mind, and a particular aspect of that or expression of that results in what we experience as matter. And a great example of that, as always, is when you go to sleep and dream. When you go to sleep and dream, you are experiencing your mind, but as expressed as a world in which you can touch and taste and experience, and it's so real that your mind believes that it is real. So the mental domain has no problem interacting with the so-called physical domain, because the physical domain is just an extension or projection or aspect of the mental domain. Like a dream is an aspect of your mind, the physical universe is an aspect of the collection of minds, the zeta configuration. And so together we are in this world where mind and matter can interact by the properties of Fourier mathematics, because they're just waves interacting with waves, structured in different ways, but waves interfacing with waves. There's no problem with that. Everything is mathematically sound and logically consistent and valid. So what I really want you guys to see here, the very cool idea of how, like, you have interesting ideas in science, and you have interesting ideas in Buddhism, and interesting Western ideas, and interesting Eastern ideas. The thing is, it's time to stop having these ideas opposed to each other or think that they're mutually exclusive and incompatible. They're not. Just like the right and left hemispheres of the brain need to work together, we need to have the intuitive, holistic aspect of our understanding working with our rational, logical, mathematical understanding together. And this is exactly what we do in the Neo-Genian system of meta-rationalism, which is that metaphysics can be understood rationally. And this is why we look to a future, a new kind of science, a meta-rationalist science, where we are understanding the soul as rigorously as we understand the trajectory in physics of a ball being thrown or anything that we can measure physically. We can understand the mind or the soul or a zeta in the same way. Now, we have to, meta-rationalism though, also acknowledges the limits of pure reason, and the limitations of pure reason are, of course, experience. So experience is the qualitative aspects imbued in mathematical form. So our reason, our logic, can tell us everything about the soul, everything about the mind, everything about the immaterial realm with respect to its structure, not what it is like to experience it. When it comes to knowing what it's like to experience something, we have to employ other methods, such as phenomenological experience, empirical exploration, altered states of consciousness, etc. So that's very important to understand See, this is where we incorporate all different facets together in the meta-rationalist system. We acknowledge the limitations of reason and acknowledge that there's a whole aspect of reality that is experiential, and we must employ different methods when it comes to those aspects of existence. So, but from a rigorous mathematical, rational, logistic standpoint, we can know everything there is to know structurally, everything that can be known structurally about reality. But when it comes to the lived experience of it, that's when we have to employ other methods, altered states of consciousness, etc., and which the East has been really good at, and the West has not. Whereas the West has excelled in more structured, linear ways, and you see that. But they need to be combined, and this is exactly what we do, exactly what we synthesize. Where we transcend these spiritual and scientific ideas into a meta-rationalist understanding of existence, so we can know what we are, where we are, why we are here, build a new world that reflects those ideas, and look within and unite as a collective. So my friends, I have a lot of videos. Check them out if you want to know more about our system and what we talk about, the Neo-Genian system and reality. Check out my different videos, and please like and subscribe so we can get this information out there. And if you enjoy my work, consider supporting on Patreon. You get access to all our members only videos and a new members only video every week. The one we're going to have right now is Do Plants Have Souls? As we take a look at the nature of nature. That's going to be really cool. So support on any tier on Patreon, or tier 2 or higher on YouTube by hitting the join button for that. And always remember, never feel pressured to support monetarily. You don't have to. There are plenty of free ways you can support, like liking, subscribing, and sharing. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who does support, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Enki, Nusalina, Paul Rogers, Eric Fire, Massam, Christopher Smith, and everyone else. Thank you very much.